This video is about the mom walked into the concert hall and a billionaire made her laugh. If this story touches your heart, please mention where you are watching from in the comments. Please like the video and share your thoughts in comments. The air inside the concert hall hummed with an electric anticipation, a sea of elegantly dressed patrons murmuring in anticipation. As the lights dimmed, Helen Turner took a deep breath, still feeling the rush of the outside world as she stepped into this oasis of art. A mother of two and recently divorced, Helen had carved out this night as a rare escape from the whirlwind of her life. The music was her charge, a way to reconnect with the woman she used to be before motherhood, before the whirlwind of her marriage swept her off her feet and ultimately left her adrift. She scanned the crowd, her eyes landing on a particularly striking figure in a tailored navy suit, his silhouette powerful yet relaxed. Alexander Reed. The name whispered through the hall like an echo. Billionaire. Philanthropist. Enigmatic. She had heard snippets of gossip about him. He was a fixture in the city's elite social scene. Tonight, he was here, sitting just a few rows ahead. Helen felt an inexplicable draw to him, an absurd attraction. It made her heart race in a way that felt both thrilling and terrifying. She shook her head, pushing the thought away, and turned her attention back to the stage, where the orchestra began tuning their instruments. In the silence, her phone vibrated in her pocket. Glancing down, she saw a text from her sister, Maria, *, the concert. Did you see him? *. Rolling her eyes, Helen typed back, *, no, and I am not looking for him. Just trying to enjoy the music. *, she knew her sister's teasing would only intensify if she mentioned that she denoticed a billionaire. As the conductor raised his baton, the first notes washed over her, cascading like a waterfall. The music enveloped her, pulling her into a world where every note resonated with unspoken emotions. She was lost, suspended in time, until a sudden burst of laughter shattered the stillness. Turning her head instinctively, she spotted Alexander Reed, his deep laugh booming across the hall, directed at the woman beside him. She was striking, with flowing blonde hair and an easy charm that seemed to sparkle in the dim lights. Helen felt an unexpected pang of envy, and she quickly turned her gaze back to the stage. Why should it matter? She chastised herself. She was here for the music, not to analyze the dynamics of the elite. But as the music swelled, she couldn't help but steal glances at Alexander. Wherever he laughed, it was like the world stopped for just a moment. There was a warmth in his presence, a magnetic pull that seemed to draw people in. Shaking her head once more at her own foolish thoughts, Helen focused on the conductor, the music weaving around her like a gentle embrace. First half of the concert passed in a blur of melodies, and Helen lost herself completely, her worries melting away with each note. As the applause washed over the theater after the final piece, she stood, clapping alongside the rest of the audience. That was when the unexpected happened. After the concert, as patrons began to mingle and chat, Helen found herself weaving through the crowd, her heart still thrumming with the lingering notes of the orchestra. She was halfway to the exit when she overheard a familiar laugh. Alexander, you simply have to tell me how you manage to look flawless every time. It was the blonde, her voice saccharine, dripping with flirtation. Helen's cheeks flushed involuntarily as she turned to leave, eager for the safety of the exit. But fate had other plans. Before she could escape, she bumped into a solid frame. Oh, pardon me, she exclaimed, stepping back, her gaze rising to find Alexander Reed staring down at her, a bemused smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Not at all, he replied, his voice smooth like silk. I think I might have interrupted your escape. Just leaving, she stammered, feeling her heart race. It was quite the performance. It was, wasn't it? Although I must say, I didn't expect the applause to be one-sided. You were practically glowing over there, he said, his eyes sparkling with mischief. Helen's cheeks flushed hotter. You have an interesting perspective on the audience. It's refreshing. And you have an interesting way of deflecting compliments, he countered, his gaze unwavering. Helen, right? I believe I overheard someone mention your name. How was the concert for you? Intense, emotional, she said, summoning her composure. A good reminder of what I've been missing. So, you were one of those music lover? He leaned closer, his voice dropped into a conspiratorial whisper. I must admit, I am drawn to a woman with passion. Helen felt a flurry of warmth at his words, her defenses faltering momentarily. I think everyone has their passions, just sometimes they get lost in the noise of everyday life. True enough, he said, his expression serious for a brief moment. Then, a playful glint danced in his eyes. So what's a mother of two doing at a concert like this? Surely there are more exhilarating adventures to be had. Perhaps, she replied, emboldened by the challenge. But this is my adventure for tonight, and I'd rather not trade it for chaotic playgrounds or tantrums at bedtime. He laughed, the sound rich and inviting. I admire that. Nothing wrong with a little escape. I often find myself wishing I could escape the expectations tied to my name. Ellen raised an eyebrow, intrigued. You, a billionaire, wishing to escape expectations, I wouldn't have guessed. That's easy to make assumptions based on appearances. People tend to forget that billionaires are human too. We have our own struggles. The sincerity in his voice softened the air between them. Is that so? She felt a flicker of curiosity. What kind of struggles are we talking about? Before he could respond, the blonde from earlier reappeared, placing a possessive hand on Alexander's arm. Oh, there you are. I thought you'd disappeared. Her tone was saccharine, but there was a competitive edge to it. Alexander's attention shifted, and Helen felt a sudden tug of disappointment. It's just a brief conversation with this lovely lady, he said, gesturing to Helen. With a practiced smile, the blonde extended her hand. I am Victoria. So nice to meet you. Alexander, dear, are we heading to the after party? Helen felt the sharp edge of jealousy slice through her. After party? What was she expecting, really? This man moved in circles far removed from her own. Sure, I'll be there in a moment, he replied, pausing to look back at Helen. It was a pleasure talking with you, Helen. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. And just like that, the moment shattered. Helen nodded, forcing a smile, but inside she felt the warmth of their exchange dissipate, replaced with a cold wave of reality. As she turned to leave, she couldn't shake the lingering feeling of what might have been. That laughter, that spark of connection, it had felt real, if only for a moment. Now, as Victoria wrapped her arm around Alexander, laughing brightly, it burned in her chest like a flickering candle, threatening to extinguish in the shadows of doubt. But Helen straightened her shoulders and stepped into the night, the vibrant lights of the city casting long shadows. The music still echoed in her mind, mingling with the bittersweet taste of possibility, and she knew that for better or worse, things were beginning to change. The sound of traffic echoed in the distance as Helen stepped outside the concert hall, the cool night air brushing against her skin and filling her lungs with a sense of freedom. Her heart still raced, not just from the music but from the brief encounter with Alexander. She fought to shake off the sensation of disappointment as she walked away, but his laughter lingered in her thoughts, a haunting melody she couldn't quite escape. She glanced back at the concert hall, bathed in soft lights, and for a fleeting moment, she wondered if she should turn around. What if he was still there, watching her leave, that playful glint in his eye? But reality tugged at her gently. She was a mother of two, not a part of his world. As she made her way to her car, Helen felt a familiar tension rise within her, the conflict of wanting a life beyond motherhood, of wanting to be seen as someone more than just mom. The realities of her life awaited her, the children's bedtime routines, the laundry, the school lunches. Would they ever let her breathe again? Sliding into the driver's seat, she turned the key in the ignition, her thoughts swirling. Maria's voice echoed in her mind, teasing and relentless. Asterisk, did you see him? Asterisk, yes, she had seen him, and it was not just in passing. She had felt his energy, the warmth of his presence. The way he had looked at her had sparked a flicker of something long dormant inside her. But there was also Victoria, blonde and beautiful, with laughter that wrapped around Alexander like a cozy blanket. Helen scoffed at herself as she drove through the city streets. Who was she to think a man like him could ever be interested in her? As she pulled into her driveway, her phone buzzed again. It was another text from Maria, asterisk, still waiting for details. This better not be another boring night. Asterisk. Helen couldn't help but chuckle despite the weight on her chest. Tapping on the screen, she replied, asterisk, nothing boring about it. Just the concert and an encounter with a billionaire. Asterisk. Asterisk, well, who? Asterisk, Maria responded almost immediately. Helen hesitated, biting her lip. Should she tell her sister about Alexander? It felt too raw, too real. Instead, she typed, asterisk, just some guy. Don't get too excited. Asterisk. She stepped into her house, the familiar scent of the children's toys and the faint lingering aroma of the dinner she hastily prepared wrapping around her like an embrace. The living room was a chaotic mess of crayons, dolls, and scattered books, the remnants of a day spent with her kids. But then she heard the soft, sweet sound of her daughter's voice singing an off-key rendition of a pop song from the radio. A smile broke across Helen's face as she moved to the kitchen, where she found Emma, her 8-year-old, performing for her stuffed animals. That sounded amazing, sweetheart, Helen said, leaning against the doorframe. Emma turned, her face lighting up. Really? You think so? I was practicing for the talent show. Of course, you've got the moves and the voice. You'll steal the show. Helen cheered, ruffling her daughter's hair. Can you help me with my costume? I want to wear the sparkly dress. Emma's eyes sparkled with excitement. Absolutely, but first, let us get you ready for bed. Helen walked over to the kitchen counter, grabbing the mug of cold tea she'd left behind earlier. She took a sip, grimacing at his bitterness as her thoughts drifted back to Alexander. In that moment, she craved excitement, something beyond the mundanity of bedtime routines. But before she could delve deeper into her longing, her son, Noah, a 6-year-old with a wild imagination and boundless energy, burst into the room. Mom, can we build a fort, please? He pleaded, his big brown eyes wide with enthusiasm. After baths, buddy, she replied, feeling a rush of affection for her children. You know the rules. Fine, but hurry, he said, bolting toward the staircase, his footsteps echoing against the wooden floors. As Helen prepped for the evening ritual, she felt the weight of the day lifting, replaced by the warmth of her children surrounding her. Yet, somewhere deep inside, the flicker of desire for more remained more than just being a mother, more than just surviving day by day. That night, after tucking both kids in bed, Helen settled down on the couch with a glass of wine. She allowed herself to remember Alexander's playful banter and the way his gaze had lingered on her. The warmth of his laughter was intoxicating, and she clung to the memory, letting it wrap around her like a soft blanket. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a notification from social media. A picture from the concert had been shared, and her heart dropped as she saw Alexander as a unmistakable figure, grinning widely with Victoria at his side. The caption read, *Another night, another fabulous event. #Billionaire life *. Ellen felt a sharp pang of jealousy and a welcome reminder of the chasm between their worlds. She tossed her phone aside, feeling foolish for letting a photo affect her so deeply. This was the reality of her life. She was a mother, and he was a billionaire. Just because they had shared a moment didn't mean anything lasting could come of it. The next day at work, Helen found herself distracted, the humdrum of tasks blending into a background noise as her thoughts wandered to the concert. She was meeting her friend and fellow teacher, Sarah, for lunch, and as they sat down at a quaint cafe, Helen couldn't help but share her experience. I met Alexander Reed, she said, biting into her sandwich, trying to sound casual about it. What, like the billionaire? Sarah's eyes widened, and Helen could see the wheels turning in her friend's head. Yes, but it was nothing. We just talked for a few minutes. Sarah leaned in, her expression animated. You were kidding, he is gorgeous and rich. Did you feel a connection? Helen hesitated, a faint blush creeping up her neck. Maybe, he was charming, but he is in a different world. He probably doesn't even remember me. No, come on, you have to go to one of his charity events or something. You can't let this opportunity slip away. The thought sent a thrill racing through Helen, but it was quickly overshadowed by doubt. And what, shop as the token single mom? No thanks. Why not? You were amazing, Helen. You deserve to be in those circles too. You can let insecurities hold you back, Sarah encouraged, her voice a mix of passion and practicality. Helen shook her head. I just don't think I belong there. I've got 2 kids to care for, that is my focus. But what about you? Sarah pressed, leaning back in her chair. You deserve to have joy, excitement, and more. Don't forget that. By the end of lunch, Helen's mind was a jumble of thoughts, both inspired and conflicted. As she returned to her classroom filled with the laughter and chaos of children, she couldn't shake the feeling that maybe she was missing out on more than just a night at a concert. The week rolled on in a blur, and with each passing day, Helen's thoughts drifted back to that one brief encounter with Alexander. The warmth of his attention felt like a spark igniting a flame within her, stoking the embers of a passion she thought had long dimmed. On Friday, with the weekend looming, her phone buzzed with an unexpected notification. It was a direct message from Alexander on social media. *K Helen. I hope you're doing well. I enjoyed our chat at the concert. If you were free, I'd love to continue that conversation over coffee sometime. A heart raced as she read the message again, her mind swirling with possibilities. Could this be real? A billionaire wanting to have coffee with her. She swallowed hard, her heart pounding with excitement and fear. Taking a deep breath, she replied, "ID like that." When? Almost instantly, he responded, "How about tomorrow? There is a little cafe I know that is perfect for a quiet chat. Let me know if you're in." Helen's stomach fluttered with nerves. This was it, a chance to step into a world she had thought was unattainable. But as quickly as excitement surged within her, doubts crept in. What if she made a fool of herself? What if she wasn't enough? But deep down, a different part of her whispered that this was her moment to embrace something new, something just for her. ***, she typed, a smile spreading across her face. As she hit send, Helen felt a rush of adrenaline. Tomorrow, she would not only meet Alexander again, but also step outside the confines of her own expectations. She could feel the world shifting around her, the faint sound of music echoing in her heart, echoing a promise of change. The next day dawned bright and clear, the sun spilling through Helen's bedroom window like liquid gold. She lay in bed, her heart racing, images of Alexander flooding her mind. She could practically hear his laughter, feel the warmth of his gaze. "Mom." Emma's voice rang out from the hallway, breaking the spell. "Are you awake?" "Yeah, I am coming." Helen called back, forcing herself to focus on the day ahead. She rolled out of bed and glanced at her reflection in the mirror. Her hair was a mess, and dark circles hinted at sleepless nights. But today felt different. She had a date, or at least a coffee meeting, with a billionaire. As she moved through the morning routine, brushing her teeth, putting together the kids' breakfast, her mind kept drifting back to Alexander. What would they talk about? Would it be awkward? She cringed at the thought of fumbling for words, but then again, there was an undeniable thrill at the prospect of seeing him again. "Mom, can I have pancakes, please?" Noah's voice broke through her thoughts. "Sure, Betty, just give me a minute." She flipped the pancakes while mentally preparing for her meeting. She was so caught up in her thoughts that she didn't notice the time passing until Emma's voice chimed in again, a note of urgency now. "Mom, we're going to be late." "Just a few more minutes." Helen replied, her heart racing as she glanced at the clock. She had less than an hour before she needed to leave. After a hasty breakfast, she dropped the kids off at her sister Maria's house, who was more than happy to babysit for the day. "Have fun." Marie winked, and Helen felt a pang of guilt mixed with excitement. As she drove toward the cafe, she fought the urge to turn back, but the thought of Alexander waiting pulled her forward. The cafe was tucked away on a charming street lined with blooming trees. It was a cozy spot, the aroma of coffee mingling with baked goods, creating an inviting atmosphere. Ellen stepped inside, her heart pounding in her chest. She scanned the room, spotting him seated at a small table in the corner. Alexander looked effortlessly handsome, dressed in a light grey sweater that hugged his frame perfectly. He glanced up as she approached, a smile breaking across his face that sent warmth flooding through her. "Hey, you made it." His voice was smooth, rich with welcoming ease. "Of course, I wouldn't miss it," she replied, her nerves easing just a bit as she took a seat across from him. "I was beginning to think you might stand me up. I'd have had to resort to desperate measures like bribing the barrister for your number," he teased, and she laughed, feeling the tension ebb away. "I wouldn't have put it past you. What would you offer?" $1 million donation to the local school," she replied, leaning in slightly, her playful side surfacing. "Maybe a little less than that, but I've been known to throw some money around," he replied, his grin widening. "But honestly, I'd much rather have your company." "Flattery will get you everywhere, Mr. Ree," she said, her heart racing at the way he looked at her, as if she were the only person in the room. They ordered coffee and pastries, their conversation flowing easily. Alexander shared stories of his philanthropic work, his passion evident in the way he spoke. Helen found herself drawn in, captivated not just by his wealth, but by his genuine desire to make a difference. "It is exhausting at times," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "People see the money, but they don't understand the weight of the expectations that come with it." Helen nodded, feeling a connection to his struggles. "I get that. Being a mom is a full-time job with its own set of expectations. It can feel suffocating at times." "Do you have time for yourself?" he asked, leaning forward, genuine concern etched on his face. "Not often enough," she replied, her voice softer. "Being a single mother means I am constantly juggling, and sometimes I forget what it feels like to just be." "Then let us change that," he said, his gaze locking onto hers. "I'd like to help you find that time. You deserve it." Ellen felt a rush of warmth at his words. The sincerity in his voice ignited something inside her, a longing she hadn't felt in years. "I appreciate that. It is just complicated," she replied, pulling back slightly. "Complicated how?" he pressed, his brow furrowed with genuine interest. "I don't want to get too complicated," she said, forcing a smile, hoping to deflect the seriousness. But as she looked into his eyes, she felt vulnerable. "I am a mother first, and I have to put my kids first." "And that is admirable," he replied, his tone softening. "But you're allowed to have a life beyond being a mother, too. You're a person in your own right, Helen." She wanted to argue, to voice the doubts that lingered at the back of her mind, but a part of her was drawn to his perspective. "It is just sometimes I feel like I am not enough, like I am stuck in a role." "You re more than enough. You re incredible. Seeing you at the concert, how you lit up, it's inspiring," he said, his eyes full of earnest admiration. The moment teetered between vulnerability and undeniable chemistry, and she felt it a spark igniting between them, a tension that made her breath catch. "Aye," she started, but was interrupted as the door swung open, and in walked Victoria, her blonde hair sparkling under the calf lights. "Alexander, there you are," she exclaimed, her tone bright but with an edge of possessiveness as she approached. Helen's heart sank as Alexander's gaze shifted from her to Victoria. "Hey, Vic," he said, his voice suddenly more guarded. "Are you ready for the charity gala tonight? I was just talking to the team about the event," Victoria continued, her eyes flitting between them, a predatory glint in her gaze. "I was just catching up with Helen here," he said, trying to keep the conversation light, but Helen could sense the shift in the air. "Oh, really? Well, I hope she is not keeping you from important matters," Victoria said, her smile tight as if she were testing the waters. "No, not at all. Just a conversation, right?" He shot a glance at Helen, a silent plea for understanding. "Yes, just a conversation," Helen echoed, swallowing her disappointment, forcing a smile that felt more like a mask than a reflection of her feelings. Victoria settled into the seat beside Alexander, a presence overshadowing the warmth that had just filled the space. "I am so glad you were part of this cause, Helen," she said, her tone dripping with saccharine sweetness. "We need more people like you in our circle." "Thanks, I appreciate that," Helen replied, trying to maintain her composure, but the tension between the three of them felt palpable. "Are you coming to the gala?" Victoria asked, turning her attention fully to Helen, her expression both curious and calculating. I hadn't planned on it," Helen replied, feeling the rush of anxiety creep back in. "I am not really part of that world. Though, you should definitely come. It'll be a fabulous event. Who knows? It could be a great networking opportunity for you," Victoria said, her smile unwavering but her eyes narrowing slightly. "Yeah, it could be fun," Alexander chimed in, his gaze flickering between the two women. Helen felt trapped, the warmth from before replaced by confusion and uncertainty. Did she really belong there? "I'll think about it," she said, her voice steady, but internally she wrestled with her doubts. As Victoria continued to chat animatedly, Helen found herself withdrawing, the energy in the room shifting. She was all too aware of the dynamic, the way Alexander's attention pulled toward Victoria. But then, when Victoria turned to sip her drink, Alexander leaned in closer, a conspiratorial smile appearing just for Helen. "Ignore her. She has all charm but no substance. You deserve better than that," he whispered, his warmth returning with a rush. Helen's heart fluttered at his words, and for a moment, the world around them slipped away. "I am trying," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Their eyes locked, and it felt as if they were the only two people in the cafe. But just as quickly, that connection was interrupted as Victoria turned back, her bright smile forced. "Isn't that right, Alexander? You've always told me how vital it is to build relationships," she said, her tone dripping with insincerity. "Yes, exactly," he said, a hint of annoyance creeping into his voice. Helen glanced at her watch, her heart heavy with the realization that she had to leave soon. "I should get going," she said, standing up and grabbing her purse, the moment slipping through her fingers like sand. "Oh, come on, we were just getting to the best part of the conversation," Victoria interjected, her eyes narrowing slightly as she leaned closer to Alexander. "Maybe next time," Helen replied, forcing a smile as she stepped back. "Please, don't be a stranger, Alexander." Helen stepped outside, the afternoon sun a stark contrast to the emotional storm brewing within her. The cafe door swung shut behind her, the soft jingle of the bell echoing in her ears as she walked away from the intoxicating warmth of Alexander's presence. She felt like she was walking in a haze, her heart heavy with unspoken words and unresolved tension. Victoria's bright laughter still rang in her ears, a reminder of the chasm between her world and Alexander's. What had she expected? That she could dive into the life of a billionaire, a world filled with glamour and expectations, and it would feel like slipping on a well-fitted glove. She shook her head, her mind racing as she crossed the street, her thoughts pulling her in all directions, each as exhausting as the last. As she got into her car, her thoughts drifted back to their conversation. Alexander had been genuine, his interest in her evident in the way he leaned in, the way his eyes sparkled when he spoke. But then, there was Victoria, that sharp reminder that she was an outsider. Was she really ready to enter that world? The thought of attending a charity gala, of being seen in the same light as someone like Alexander, sent a rush of fear through her veins. And yet the thrill of possibility lingered, nudging at her heart. She glanced at her phone, the screen illuminating with notifications. She quickly dismissed them and pulled out of the parking lot, focusing instead on the street ahead. At home, the comforting chaos of the kids greeted her. As she walked into the house, the familiar sounds of laughter and the clanging of toys reminded her why she was here. Emma and Noah sprawled on the living room floor, a fort they built out of every cushion they could find. "Mom, look," Emma called, poking her head out from beneath a pile of pillows. "We're saving the world from the monsters. Do we get a snack if we help?" Noah chimed in, his eyes wide with excitement. "Of course, every hero deserves a snack," Helen replied, her heart swelling with love as she dropped her bag and joined them on the floor. As she helped them fortify their structure, her thoughts kept drifting back to Alexander. The way he had looked at her, the way he had made her laugh, felt like a distant dream. Yet the memory of it ignited something within her that she had thought was dulled by the mundanity of her life. "Mom, can you come to the talent show with me?" Emma asked, her voice breaking through Helena's reverie. "Of course, sweetheart, I wouldn't miss it for the world," she replied, ruffling her daughter's hair. As she watched Emma's face light up, Helen felt a pang of guilt. Here was her daughter, full of dreams and excitement, and yet Helen was contemplating a world far removed from their everyday lives. That evening, after the children were tucked in bed, Helen sat with a glass of wine, the soft glow of the lamp casting a warm light around her. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through her social media feeds. There it was again, another post of Alexander at a lavish event, surrounded by glitz and glamour. He looked effortlessly handsome, engaged in a conversation with a group of people who seemed captivated by his presence. Helen felt a twist in her stomach as she compared herself to the women surrounding him, all polished and poised, embodying a life she wasn't sure she belonged to. A notification popped up on her screen, a message from Alexander. Her heart raced as she opened it. *K Helen. I hope you're still considering the gala tomorrow. It would be great to see you there. *. Helen hesitated, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Could she really do this? Could she step into a world filled with light and laughter, a stark contrast to her everyday life of chaos? *I am not sure if I belong there, *, she finally replied, the words feeling heavy. *You belong wherever you want to be. You do be a breath of fresh air at the gala. And if it helps, I'll be there too, *, he responded almost instantly. The sincerity in his words ignited a flicker of courage within her. What was the worst that could happen? She could go, soak in the atmosphere, and maybe even enjoy herself. *Okay, I'll be there. She typed, her heart racing at the prospect. As she hit send, a wave of exhilaration washed over her. She was stepping into the unknown, embracing a part of herself that she had tucked away for too long. The next day arrived with a flurry of activity, her morning a chaotic blend of preparing the children for school while simultaneously getting herself ready for the gala. As she applied her makeup, Helen felt a nervous flutter in her stomach. She wanted to look good for Alexander, but the thought of standing in that room surrounded by elegance made her doubt her own appearance. "Mom, are you almost ready?" Emma called from the hallway, her voice pulling Helen from her thoughts. "Just finishing up, sweetie," Helen replied, forcing a smile as she glanced in the mirror one last time. She wore a fitted black dress that accentuated her curves, the fabric soft against her skin. She hoped she looked as confident as she wanted to feel. With a final check of her appearance, she grabbed her purse and headed out. The drive to the venue was a blur of anticipation. Each block brought her closer to the unknown, and with each passing moment, her heart raced faster. When she arrived, the venue was nothing short of breathtaking. The entrance was adorned with twinkling lights, the soft hum of chatter blending with the notes of live music drifting through the air. She felt like she was stepping into a different world, one that sparkled with possibility. As she walked inside, she scanned the room, her heart pounding as she searched for Alexander. There he was standing near the entrance, his expression lighting up as he spotted her. "Hey, you made it," he exclaimed, his smile wide and genuine, washing away the nerves that had been building within her. "I did. This place is incredible," she replied, her eyes wide with wonder as she took in the lavish decorations and the elegantly dressed guests mingling around. "You just wait until the program starts. It is going to be a magical evening," he said, his gaze lingering on her in a way that made her heart flutter. "You look stunning, by the way." Helen felt a warm blush creep up her cheeks, the sincerity in his compliment sending her nerves into a tailspin. "Thank you, you look well, like a billionaire," she replied, her attempt at humor bringing a soft chuckle from him. "Let us grab a drink and find a place to sit before the event kicks off," he suggested, leading her through the crowd. As they made their way to the bar, the atmosphere buzzed with excitement, and Helen caught snippets of conversations filled with laughter and anticipation. "So, tell me, how does it feel to be in the spotlight?" she asked, trying to deflect from her own nervousness. "It is a bit overwhelming at times, to be honest," he confessed, his voice lowering as they waited for their drinks. "People have certain expectations, and sometimes it is hard to navigate through all of it, but moments like this, with great company, make it worthwhile." She met his gaze, her heart racing at the implication behind his words. "I can imagine the pressure that comes with it. I feel like a fish out of water in places like this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You are not a fish out of water. You belong here, Helen. You have a light that draws people in," he replied, and again she felt her cheeks flush with warmth. "Maybe I am just here for the snacks," she joked, lifting her glass as if to toast her own humor. "You are far too modest," he laughed, clinking his glass against hers. Their eyes met, and the world around them faded into a blur. In that moment, it felt as if they were the only two people in the room. As they found a spot to sit, the program began, filled with speeches and performances that captivated the audience. Helen found herself leaning in closer to Alexander as he shared tidbits about the charity and the impact it was making. His passion was infectious, and she felt a sense of admiration blossom within her. A part of her longed to step into that world fully, to be someone who shared their commitment to making a difference. But then, she couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty. What if she couldn't keep up? What if Alexander was merely being polite, and she was just another fleeting moment in his life? "Are you having fun?" he asked, his voice breaking through her thoughts. "Yeah, I am," she replied, forcing a smile. "It's everything I expected and more." "That's great to hear," he said, his expression softening. "I am glad you came. It wouldn't have felt the same without you." Just then, Victoria appeared, her presence commanding as she approached their table, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "There you are, Alexander. I was looking for you," she said, her tone light but her gaze cutting through the air. "I was just catching up with Helen," he replied smoothly, a hint of annoyance dancing in his eyes. "Of course, but we have a few things to discuss regarding the gala," she